spoke of butterflies. Where is their little prince, he asked. I don't want eagle eyes or blood, said the king, too pleased with the outcome of blood and cheese. The butterflies will be dragons someday. Old Sir George can turn his way.
George R.R. Martin has written the post that I've been looking forward to reading. He's written a post about what went wrong. Well, not so much what went wrong with season 2, a little bit about what went wrong with season 2 of House of the Dragon, but also how these changes that have been made could potentially affect seasons 3 and 4, and how small he refers to this as a butterfly effect, and he's referred to this butterfly effect as far back as 2015 when he wrote a post about Game of Thrones. But he did promise the other day on a post, he said, I do not look forward to other posts I need to write about everything that's gone wrong with House of the Dragon, but I need to do that too, and I will. Not today, though. So he wrote that. And then he wrote this today. Beware the butterflies. Now, I have this tab open still from when I was writing my own post about this earlier. But this is gone. This, if you go to this URL right here at the top, if you go to that URL, you will get hit with a 404 error message because this post has been deleted. Obviously, the internet being the internet does not forget. The North remembers. What is deleted may never die. But here we are. I will just read. This is a long post. Do I want to read this whole thing? I'll go through it a little bit. So, he says he wants to talk about A Son for a Son and Rhaenyra the Cruel, the first couple episodes of the second season. He says, these were terrific episodes, well written, well directed, powerfully acted, a great way to kick off the new seasons. Fans and critics alike seem to agree. There was only one aspect of the episodes that drew significant criticism, the handling of blood and cheese, and the death of Prince Jaehaerys. From the commentary I saw online, opinion was split there. The readers of Fire and Blood found the sequence underwhelming, a disappointment, watered down from what they were expecting. Viewers who had not read the book had no such problems. Most of them found the sequence a real gut punch, tragic, horrifying, nightmarish, etc. Some reported being reduced to tears. I found myself agreeing with both sides. Now he says that, but then he goes on to explain why he's really with the book readers, which is no surprise. Martin, to be fair to Martin, he has not said that every change in this show has been bad. He really was full of praise for season 1, and especially for their handling of King Viserys I, who he even talked about, he wished he'd written that version of the king, and he would like to go back and change the book, to make him more like that. So he's not against changes, but he does urge people who are making adaptations to sort of think about the butterfly effect and think about how these small changes can make a big deal later on. But also, he talks about in his book, and I'm not going to read all of this, he talks about how in the show there were 3 kids. There was Jaehaerys, the twins, boy and girl, and then their younger brother Maelor, who is only 2. So when they arrive, the Blood and Cheese characters give Helena a choice between the 2 sons, and she chooses the younger one to preserve the life of the heir. And so then they kill the one she doesn't choose, and they tell the little boy, your mom wanted you dead, and that's a pretty scary thing to say to a little boy. It's a horrible thing, and he says, I still believe the scene in the book is stronger. The readers have the right of that. The 2 killers are crueler in the book. I thought the actors who played the killers on the show were excellent, but the characters are crueler, harder, and more frightening in Fire and Blood. In the show, Blood is a gold cloak. In the book, he is a former gold cloak, stripped of his office for beating a woman to death. Book Blood is the sort of man who might think making a woman choose which of her sons should die is amusing, especially when they double down on the wanton cruelty by murdering the boy she tries to save. Book Cheese is worse too. He does not kick a dog, true, but he does not have a dog, and he's the one who tells Maelor that his mom wants him dead. Him dead, that's an error. An error that will never be fixed. I would also suggest that Helena shows more courage, more strength in the book by offering her own life to save her son. Offering a piece of jewelry is just not the same. As I saw it, the Sophie's Choice aspect was the strongest part of the sequence, the darkest, the most visceral. I hated to lose that, and judging from the comments online, why does he separate those 2 words? Online, most of the fans seem to agree. When Ryan Condal, the showrunner, first told me that what he meant to do ages ago, back in 2022 might be, I argued against it for all these reasons. I did not argue long or with much heat, however. The change weakened the scene, I felt, but only a bit, and Ryan had what seemed to be practical reasons for it. They did not want to deal with casting another child, especially a 2-year-old toddler. Kids that young will inevitably slow down production, and there will be budget implications. Budget was already an issue on House of the Dragon. It made sense to save money wherever we could. Maybe that's why this post has been deleted. Moreover, Ryan assured me that we were not losing Prince Maelor, simply postponing him. Queen Helena could still give birth to him in Season 3, presumably after getting with child late in Season 2. That made sense to me, so I withdrew my objections and acquiesced to the change. I still love the episode and the blood and sequence overall. Losing the Helena's Choice beat did weaken the scene, but not to any great degree. Only the book readers would even notice its absence. The book readers, who, again, are a large and sizable chunk of the people watching the show, but probably not the majority. Viewers who had never read Fire and Blood would still find the scenes heartrending. Maelor did not actually do anything in the scene, after all. How could he? He was only 2 years old. There is another aspect to the removal of the young princeling, however. And now we get into big spoiler territories of what's going to happen, or what may not happen, or will happen in a different way in the book. So if you haven't read the book, this is going to be spoilers. Sometime between the initial decision to remove Maelor, a big change was made. The prince's birth was no longer just going to be pushed back to Season 3, he was never going to be born at all. The younger son of Aegon and Helena would never appear. Picture of butterfly. Most of you know about the butterfly effect, I assume. And how he talks about the butterfly effect, basically, a small change early on can lead to great big tidal changes later on, so we're not going to read all that. Maelor is a 2-year-old toddler in Fire and Blood, but like our butterfly, he has an impact on the story out of all proportion to his size. The readers among you may recall that when it appears that Rhaenyra and her blacks are about to capture King's Landing, Queen Alicent becomes concerned for the safety of Helena's remaining children and takes steps to save them by smuggling them out of the city. The task is given to 2 knights of the Kingsguard. Sir Willis Fell is commanded to deliver Princess Jaehaera to the Baratheons at Storm's End, while Maelor is given over to Sir Rickard Thorne to be escorted across the Mander to the protection of the Hightower army on its way to King's Landing. Willis Fell delivers Jaehaera safely to the Baratheons at Storm's End, but Sir Rickard fares less well. He and Maelor get as far as Bitterbridge, where he is revealed as a Kingsguard in a tavern called the Hog's Head. Once discovered, Sir Rickard fights bravely to protect his young charge and bring him to safety, but he does not even make it across the bridge before some crossbows bring him down. Prince Maelor is torn from his arms and then sadly ripped to pieces by the mob fighting over the boy and the huge reward that Rhaenyra has offered for his capture and return. Will any of that appear on the show? Maybe, but I don't see how. The butterflies would seem to prohibit it. You could perhaps make Sir Rickard's ward be Jaehaera instead of Maelor, but Jaehaera can't be killed. She has a huge role to play as Aegon's next heir. Could maybe make Maelor a newborn instead of a 2-year-old, but that would scramble up the timeline, which is a bit of a mess already. I have no idea what Ryan has planned, if indeed he has planned anything. But given Maelor's absence from Episode 2, the simplest way to proceed would be just to drop him entirely, lose the bit where Alicent tries to send the kids to safety, drop Rickard Thorne, or send him with Willis Fell so Jaehaera has 2 guards. Yell at my dogs. Hey, baby! Shut the fuck up! Always barking. From what I know, that seems to be what Ryan is doing here. It's simplest, yes, and may make sense in terms of budgets and shooting schedules, but simpler is not better. The Bitterbridge scene has tension, suspense, action, bloodshed, a bit of heroism, and a lot of tragedy. Rickard Thorne is a tertiary character at best. Most viewers, as opposed to readers, will never know he's gone, since they never knew him at all. Though we did meet Rickard Thorne. He took Alicent camping. But I rather liked giving him his brief moment of heroism. Oh, and speaking of which, the actor who plays him, whose name I can't remember right now, but would make a great recasting choice for Balin in the Star Wars show Ahsoka. I think he's got the right look. Anyways, the taste of courage and loyalty of the Kingsguard, regardless of whether they are black or green. The butterflies are not done with us yet, however. In the book, when word of Prince Maelor's death and the grisly manner of his passing reaches the Red Keep, that proves to be the thing that drives Queen Helena to suicide. She could barely stand to look at Maelor, knowing that she chose him to die in the Sophie's Choice scene, and now he is dead in truth, her words having come true. The grief and guilt are too much for her to bear. In Ryan's outline for Season 3, Helena still kills herself, for no particular reason. There is no fresh horror, no triggering event to overwhelm the fragile young queen. Well, that's not good. Jeez. Queen Helena, a sweet and gentle soul, is much beloved by the small folk. King's Landing, Rhaenyra was not, and so when rumors began to arise that Helena did not kill herself, but rather was murdered at Rhaenyra's command, the commons are quick to believe them. That night, King's Landing rose in bloody riot, I wrote on page 506 of Fire and Blood. It is the beginning of the end for Rhaenyra's rule over the city, ultimately leading to the storming of the Dragon Pit, which is a hugely important thing, and the rise of the shepherd's mob that drives Rhaenyra to flee the city and return to Dragonstone, and her death. Dun dun dun. Maelor by himself means little. He's a small child, does not have a line of dialogue, does nothing of consequence but die, but where and when and how that does matter. Losing Maelor weakened the end of the blood and cheese sequence, but it also cost us the Bitterbridge scene. With all its horror and heroism, it undercut the motivation for Helena's suicide, and that in turn sent thousands into the streets and alleys screaming for justice for their murdered queen. None of that is essential, I suppose, but all of it does serve a purpose, and it all helps to tie the storylines together, so one thing follows another, in a logical and convincing manner. What will we offer the fans instead once we've killed these butterflies? I have no idea. I do not recall that Ryan and I ever discussed this back when he first told me they were pushing back on Aegon's second son. Maelor himself is not essential, but if losing him means we lose also Bitterbridge, Helena's suicide, and the riots, well, that's a considerable loss. There are larger and more toxic butterflies to come if House of the Dragon goes ahead with some of the changes being contemplated for seasons 3 and 4, ... So there you go. There's the article. It is now gone, but not forgotten. That last line, that is ominous. Yeah, that... Oh, what am I doing here? I know how to use OBS, I promise. That's very ominous, right? Like... more toxic. Toxic is a strong word, and kind of a big deal. What could those things be? Fundamental changes to the main characters of the story, for one. Like, you know, how Rhaenyra ends up. They've really changed Rhaenyra's character a lot, so I could see them, you know, totally changing that, and the way she dies, or her and Alicent's relationship continues to, you know, become more and more like buddies again for some reason. It's impossible to say, and now we're probably never going to hear it. I doubt that Martin would have written like spoilers for what's going to happen in the future, what those changes are. But now we're certainly not going to hear. With him deleting this, I'm thinking, okay, he's probably done writing this kind of post because he got slapped on the wrist, or it's a contractual thing that he didn't realize he wasn't supposed to go this far, or I don't know, or maybe he just thought better of it and he's like, I can't be writing this kind of, taking these pot shots at my collaborators on this show, or they're not going to want to work with me at all. And it doesn't sound like they're working together much at all anyways, but I think he makes a great point. I mean, I think I'm of two minds here. On the one hand, you know, he's written in the past, I have it right here. He's written about how a show is a show and a book is a book. And, you know, I'll just read this. This was after the Sansa and Ramsay scenes in Game of Thrones, because Sansa never actually goes to Winterfell in the books. That's a different character completely. And he writes, how many children does Scarlett O'Hara have? 3 in the novel, 1 in the movie, none in real life. She was a fictional character. She never existed. The show is the show. The books are the book. 2 different tellings of the same story. He was much more chill about these changes back in that era of Game of Thrones. I think that probably what happened is then the rest of Game of Thrones came out and his chillness went away. And he started to worry about his legacy and all the other stuff and the stories being mangled. Of course, he talks about the butterfly effect in this post too, very similarly to what he said here. You know, the longer the show goes on, the bigger the butterflies become, he writes. Later he says, sometimes butterflies grow into dragons. So he definitely knew that these changes were going to have an effect even back then. I just don't think he knew how frustrating it would become for him. On the other hand, I'm like, okay, dude, write Right Winds of Winter. Like, a lot of the problems in Game of Thrones were because the source material ran out. I mean, that, as much as you want to blame the showrunners of that show and the writers, they did run out of the original material that they had been working with this whole time, and probably expected to at least have one more book to go off of by the end. And we still don't have, like I've said before, it's been 19 years since we have had a Sansa chapter published, because that was the last Sansa chapters were in A Feast for Crows. So, because those books, that and Dance with Dragons, were split based on character point of view chapters. So other characters too have not had a chapter in 19 years. So really, George, buddy, write the book. I mean, I get tired of saying it at a certain point. I really enjoy his writing. I'd like him to finish, but I enjoy his insights here, and I think he's not wrong that these changes they may seem small in the first place, but you have to think about where the domino chain ends, right? You knock down one, it's going to knock down more. Sometimes it can really work, but like Sansa in Game of Thrones, it really didn't, because that was such a fundamental change that so many other things changed because of it. And I would argue, and not in a good way, I would say that is the origin story, the very first moment where Game of Thrones starts to go downhill, was that change. And that, again, was also done for expediency. They didn't want to introduce a new character that nobody cared about, and they wanted to give Sansa something to do, because maybe in the books and what Martin has planned, she doesn't do that much once she gets to the Vale, or maybe, it becomes a much more of a side story, and they wanted to keep her more at the front. But I still think that that's the wrong way to go about it. Just like this, cast a little 2-year-old for Mailer in Mailer. Mailer. I want to say Maegor, but it's Mailer. Anyways. Cast a 2-year-old to play him in this, then recast him for season 3. It's just a little kid. No one will care. You've done bigger recastings already. Who cares? I don't think it would have been that much budget to just have a little 2-year-old on set for a day to film this. Anyways, so I just wanted to publish this video because this post is gone, and this is a record of it. Right here, there will be others. This is archived for sure. But this is a record that this post was published, that this is what George R.R. Martin thinks of season 2, and the changes made. He didn't go into some other stuff. He didn't go into getting rid of Nettles and basically replacing Nettles with Rhaenys. Rhaena, I think. Yeah, Rhaena. I always get those two mixed up. Too many similar names, George. It drives me crazy. He didn't talk about really the Rhaenyra and Alicent relationship, where the writers have taken enormous liberties. So there's lots and lots and lots and lots and lots more that went wrong in season 2. And also, of course, there's stuff that didn't have to do with changes so much, but just them ending on a huge cliffhanger, and obviously corporate bullshit and budgeting issues where they couldn't do a full 10 episodes. So there's lots going on here that's not just changes to the source material, but in regards to those changes, I think Martin makes a great point. I think this is something that, you say it's only book readers will notice, but the changes will diminish the work for non-book readers also. This is something that I'm also very confident in saying about something like Rings of Power, where, if you haven't read the source material, you're not that familiar with the Second Age of Middle-earth, you only like Tolkien because of the Jackson movies maybe, or whatever, which, by the way, people are always like, Jackson made changes and no one criticizes those. But I did at the time. I hated the changes in Lord of the Rings trilogy. It took me years to actually start liking those movies and accepting them. It did. At first I was like, I like some of it, but this other shit is just dry. I was very purist, and I've actually eased up there. But anyways, I would say that a lot of the lore changes in Rings of Power are detrimental to the storytelling, because that condensed storyline has made things so messy. Getting things out of order has made it make so much less sense than if they've just had stuck to, especially the order of the Forging of the Rings. If they just stuck to what was written, that would just make so much more sense. So, anyways, you can't adapt to one. It's not possible to go 1-to-1 with adaptations. You have to make some changes just because of the medium change from book to screen or game to screen or whatever it is. But there has to be a very cautious, conservative, sober effort at fidelity, and that is where I think we're seeing in season 2 much more than season 1, where that spirit of the story has changed and shifted. Season 1 made lots of changes, but a lot of those changes felt very much in service to just fleshing out the source material rather than changing it in big fundamental ways. So let me know what you think, as always, in the comments. I always appreciate your thoughts. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Thank you so much for watching. Peace. Quick update. HBO has responded to this post. They say in a statement, there are few greater fans of George R.R. Martin and his book Fire and Blood than the creative team on House of the Dragon, both in production and at HBO. Commonly, when adapting a book for the screen with its own format and limitations, the showrunner ultimately is required to make difficult choices about the characters and stories the audience will follow. We believe that Ryan Condal and his team have done an extraordinary job, and the millions of fans the series has amassed over the first 2 seasons will continue to enjoy it. I think that all of that is true, and that a lot of times we're arguing over the way that the choices the showrunner does make. And I think it's safe to say that were we in that position, we would also make mistakes, but not that mistakes have not been made. So.
I don't want eager lights or butts at the king to please with the outcome of blood and cheese. The butterflies will be dragons someday. Old Sir George R.R.